Thanks for being on the podcast and making the time.
Not only the results
Starting the season with a win is amazing.
make your career successful, but also what you have reached.
From the Netherlands, Richard Klamer.
Rachel Klamer is a Dutch professional triathlete and multi-time Olympian. She is a World Triathlon Series race winner, and she is married to fellow triathlete Richard Murry.
What does success mean to you? And also, what do you think has been the biggest factor that's led to your success?
We go see that doctor, and that doctor says, okay, you can look for another job because you cannot get back into professional sports anymore. I thought about giving up so many times. I'm not going to do this anymore. I just want to be at home. I just want to cry. And it's easier to motivate yourself than getting motivated from other people.
Guys, this is a brand new podcast, and the goal is to interview the most iconic figures in sport and health from around the world. But I need to ask you guys a big favor to please like and subscribe, because it would make a huge difference to the size of this podcast, and ultimately, the bigger the podcast gets, the bigger the guests. Enjoy this episode. Thanks for being on the podcast and making the time. And I know, seeing that I found out today that both of you are not necessarily the biggest fan of podcasts, so it's cool. I feel honored. That you guys made the time for me. First of all, how's it going this year? I know that, this is sort of, you're nearing the later parts of your career, should I say. So how was this year, the Olympics, the current situation, should I say?
It's been a crazy year. Like, a lot of things have happened, and like what you said, the Olympics, but then we also bought a house, and then we're like living here and we're not really living here, and it's been it's been all over the place, a bit of a chaotic year. And noticed we're getting older and we're starting to look at other things besides just being a professional triathlete, which is also exciting but also a bit scary. I guess all the older athletes will start to have that feeling of okay, well, it's maybe almost time for something else, but not really yet. So you're hanging in the middle somewhere.
And I guess it's sort of a point that a lot of athletes get to have to deal with.
No, true.
Myself included, hence why we're here today.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've sort of touched on where we are now. Maybe take us back, let's rewind and I mean, triathlon is not exactly the easiest sport for a multitude of reasons. I remember Richard actually told me once that he said the best race is when you black out over the finish line. So
it's possibly true, yeah.
Where did it all start, and how did you end up doing what you're doing?
It actually started not far from here. I grew up in a little village, 3 km from where we are now, and just joined the local swim squad. I initially hated swimming, but my best friend, she was going to join the swim squad, so I was like, okay, at that age you just follow what your best friends are doing. Very grateful for that, because swimming is still one of the trickier disciplines. And then started doing some running, started doing cycling, but cycling to school. Every Dutch person rides a bike, so to get to school you don't take the bus, you go by bike. So that's how I got into things, really. Never really thought about becoming a professional athlete. I don't know if you ever always thought okay, I want to become a professional athlete one day, but I definitely didn't. Yeah, but it still happened. Yeah.
When was the point where you thought, oh, okay, I want to, actually take this seriously? And
Yeah, I think it was towards the end of high school. I was always a little bit different than the other girls. I wasn't really partying and stuff. I would rather hang out with my family, doing local running races, or with older friends I had from. They were already at university and they did these cool running races, and I was still at high school hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved. I loved being outside, being active. So I started to realize, okay, maybe I'm actually quite okay at this stuff, so maybe I should give it a try. But then I started running, and at the same time I started doing triathlon. So then the Triathlon Federation was there, and the Athletics Federation, and they told me, the Athletics Federation told me you have to choose. You can't be a triathlete and a runner. But the Triathlon Federation was oh yeah, you can be a triathlete and run. So I didn't really make the decision. I just went for triathlon and did some local running races. But then as soon as I got a little bit older, actually from the moment I started to the next Olympics was less than 4 years. So I never thought, okay, in 4 years I'm going to be at the Olympics. But I didn't even, probably by the time I started, I probably didn't even know it was Olympic sport. So I knew nothing about it. I just could swim, bike and run. And then I just got into the sport, and then went to university, but wasn't very successful because I was training too much and was abroad too often. Like, we were traveling to New Zealand and Australia, and then I had exams in the Netherlands. I couldn't do them. So pretty soon after that, I was like, I'm probably just a professional athlete because I don't have time for any other stuff. So, yeah.
And what was it? Why? What was the main reason that sort of drew you to triathlon?
It's always tricky to not say that in a cocky way, but I was good at it. So I was like, well, I never knew what I wanted to do.
Confidence,
like, no. And the funny thing is, I was absolutely everything but confident. But I finished high school and I had no clue what I wanted to do. So I just chose to study, which happened to be at the National Training Center, and that's within 1 year. Like, because I started doing triathlon, and my second race was European Champs. The week before, they had me do a triathlon just to make sure I could do 3 disciplines in a row. First time I hated it. It was like I got side stitches on the run. I couldn't ride a bike properly. I mean, a city bike, but not a road bike. So it was just chaos. But yeah, someone told me, "Oh, you might be good at this," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll give it another try." And within 3 years, I was qualified for the Olympics. So it just happened. I never honestly choose, and it's not meant to be in a cocky way, but I just didn't know what to do, so I just went for it. And then, now we're here.
It's so insane because, I mean, there are many people throughout the world that they have this dream and this goal from a young age that I want to be an Olympian and I want to do this and I want to do that. And and then sometimes people kind of, in a way, fall into it. Not without effort, of course, but...
True. I think that's why you sometimes last so long as a professional athlete, because you just enjoy doing it. You're not doing it just because you feel like you want to achieve something, but you're also doing it because you enjoy it. And I still feel like it is that way. You just, as long as you're having fun, you'll last much longer and your performance will be there as well. If you feel like, okay, you have to do it because you choose to do it, or it becomes more tricky, I think.
It's it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Different.
When you meet people and people ask you what you do, and then you tell them, they look at you like, "Excuse me? What?"
But that's the fun part of it, when you meet people and they do not expect. You've got normal, we call it 9-to-5 job. It's like, well, I'm living a life. Like, sometimes people ask me, "Oh, you're on a holiday here? Or do you have a holiday?" I'm like, "No, this is my job. I'm actually working while you're just swimming here, which is awesome. I'm actually working." And then they look at me like I'm not joking.
I get the same thing.
Exactly. Oh, you're just here nice riding the downhills.
But it's hard to explain that to someone if it's their hobby, because for them to understand it, like, they can't understand that it's work, because it's like, oh, but this is what I do for fun, so
exactly.
How can it be work? But there's a difference between I choose to do this for fun today, or I have to do this. And for sure it starts with enjoyment, but at the same time, there are days where you definitely don't feel like...
No, like, that's the discussion I sometimes have with other people and even other athletes, especially when they're younger, when they say, "Oh, it has to be fun." Yeah, absolutely. When you're young, it has to be fun. That's how I got into the sport. And you still need to love what you're doing. But there are definitely days where when you're lying in bed and you wake up and you're like, "I'd rather just finish a bag of chips instead of go out and train." No, I don't believe there's anyone in the world who wakes up every day. It's like, "Oh, let's get to work every day." No, don't think so.
It's like anything. There's always, as long as you enjoy it, majority of the time.
Absolutely.
But I mean, what you guys do, the amount of training is insane. When I first sort of found out what goes into it, it was just I was like, what?
But it's different in every sport, like, and the hours you make, everyone makes them in a different way. For us it's easy to say, okay, we make so many hours, but for you, like, everything is training as well. I guess when you're going up, it's part of the hours of training you're doing. It's not just like, you're not going to stop your watch and be like, okay, that was so long, and then I'll get back up and it's part of, but exactly. But you forget about all those hours you're still working, but not necessarily training.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Still hours. Yeah.
Definitely, that's definitely an athlete perspective that I'm hearing.
It's just that to use the excuse of how many hours a week you train. Yeah.
Obviously, you're sitting there with the Red Bull cap on. When did you sign for them? What year?
Well, so first my husband, Richard Murry, was sponsored by them from South Africa. And then, I was like, that's cool. Like, can I just get into it? And then we actually contacted Red Bull Netherlands, and that was, I think it was 2016. So quite a while already, 2016.
2016, you got your first podium, right? Like at the, I don't know, the
good question. Good question. I actually forgot which year it was.
You forgot?
I don't know. We do so many races and time flies so quickly. Probably, like 2:15. I think around 2:15 or around something like that. Actually, I should actually. I look at that and I'm like, wait, 2:15 was European Games. It's hanging right there. So it was like a little bit around 2:14, 2:15 when I started to progress again. Yeah, it was just after I met Richard and joined the international coach, and got a bit older. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was that like signing with a brand like Red Bull? Because I mean, it's sort of considered these days as quite iconic for an athlete.
Quite special, especially because I grew up in a little village and not much happened there. I went to high school, and I was definitely more like how do I say it? Like someone who didn't want to be in the picture. I was like, oh, just let me do my thing. I'll just not be in your way. And then you become an athlete, and then at one moment you get sponsored by Red Bull, and you're like, well, that has changed. Like going from like a shy girl to like, okay, no, you know what? I feel like I'm with the coolest people of the world because I've got Red Bull, and it's an awesome company to be part of. Yeah, worldwide. So I was quite proud. Yeah.
And I mean, you will notice I'm wearing an OnlyFans cap.
Yeah.
And something that I find always interesting to ask people what their opinion is on it. They're moving into sport, and obviously there's this connotation that of this adult side of the brand, and they're making quite a big push to change that image somewhat, and they've got almost 300 athletes now. But I mean, some people love it, some people hate it. What's your opinion on?
I think change is always good within companies, and that's even with Red Bull, for example, that they're like, oh, you don't drink that stuff, and I'm like, wait. Ask me again. Like sometimes you need to explain to people like why you're wearing your cap and what it does for you and what it does for other people. Like then I tell people, wait, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink fizzy drinks. So what's worse? Like, and then that you start to see them like, oh yeah, okay, you got a point. So it's the same for you. If you explain people what it does for you for other people, then it changes the whole thing, really. So it's with a lot of companies, a lot of things. So I think it's cool.
I think when Red Bull came into sports back in, was it early 2000s or late 90s? I don't know, somewhere around there. It was also sort of not as accepted. Exactly. Because it's something new and different. And
new is always scary. New is always dangerous. New is always people want to talk about something new. And they will always try not to agree with you, even if you are right. Then if you're good at explaining things, then why not? Often people are jealous as well. So
they want to have the cap.
Yeah, exactly. So no, if you wear it proud, then
No, that's awesome. I'm sure that was one of your sort of highlights. Speaking, I mean, I know that I think it was 2018 that you got your first win. Or was it?
I think you're about right. It's just bad. Sure. I just don't know all the years and stuff. Yeah, probably if I start to look back, I'm like, oh yeah, the Olympics were then. It's also a weird thing because the Olympics, and there were like 5 years apart and then suddenly 3 years apart, and it just messes with your brain where you're like, Olympics in 2020, oh no, it wasn't 2021, wait, where did 2020 go? And like it seems so long ago already, but yeah, it could have been 2018.
Apparently Wikipedia says 2018.
I mean,
so
that's the funny thing, that as athletes we're always so focused on like our results, and if you have a bad race it's like, oh, it's like the end of the world, and when you win it's like, wow. But then years later, you're like, well, what year was it again? Oh, it's fine. Like, so everything in perspective, really. Yeah, that's what I definitely learned in life the last couple of years.
I think it's definitely something you hopefully learn towards the later, as you sort of progress in your career and you mature. But also, when I've spoken to other athletes, you know, your perception changes a lot. And when you're younger, it's sort of like, for me, it was racing was everything. Yeah. And you know, especially if you've been injured or you've had things like that, it gives you a lot of perspective, you know, and you learn, okay, can't do this forever.
No,
and,
exactly.
You've got to kind of figure
so
out.
Be more grateful.
Exactly. So that's cool.
I think especially when you're young, you think winning that one race is everything and it's going to change your life. And it doesn't really. I mean, yeah, maybe you get a nice sponsor deal, or maybe the next day you'll just wake up and nothing happened, and it's just next week it's race week again. That's what happened with me. I remember winning that race, and only thing I could think of is like, yeah, but that person crashed, and that person was maybe not there, and that person should have beaten me, but maybe didn't have her day. And I'm that type of athlete who will then like, that's probably, I don't want to say that's why I forgot about it, which exact year it was. I know which race it was, but it's because at nighttime I was just thinking, it's like, yeah, I won, but did I really won? Like, what if? Like, I struggle with like thinking, okay, you know, I won and I was the best that day. So that's what it shows, that even if you win, it might not mean everything. Before the start, you think, okay, if I win today, it's going to change everything. And then like a couple of hours later, you realize, nope, tomorrow's just another day. I'm still going to go to the pool, still going to do my local run. Like, yeah.
That's interesting because, you know, people think that achieving a certain goal, whether it's winning a race or making a certain amount of money or starting a business, whatever, is going to bring them, you know, a certain amount of happiness.
Yeah, exactly that.
And I mean, it does for a short time. Yeah. But it's always, okay, what's next? Yeah. You know, what's next? So it's, if you win a race, okay, the next race, you know, it's sort of, so, and that's, I think, something that people think when they're younger, or when they sort of got this goal, that when I get there, I'm going to be happy.
Then it's done.
I'm going to be happy. And you get there, and then you realize
there's always more. You know? There's always more.
And yeah, it's interesting how that, you know, I think you learn a lot through life. Yeah. So you've also, how many Olympics have you done? 3? 4. Also, 4. Like Richard as well. So I mean, you've won races, been on podiums. Is there a best moment that sort of sticks out to you in your career?
That was the Olympics 2021. This one I will not forget. I had a really tough year with Richard having heart problems, my mum passing away the year before. Going those months, actually the full year before, was just terrible. There were moments where I'm like, you know what, I do not want to do this anymore. It's not important. I just lost my mum, and we were very close. And it does something with your whole life, with your family at home, with how important you see things. And even I remember once doing a session a couple of weeks after I heard my mum was very sick, and an athlete complaining about her, like, not getting the time she wanted to do. And until weeks before, I used to be like that as well. But that moment, I was like, seriously? You're worrying about that times you're not making? I was like, I got so angry. So then you can see the change, what something in your life does to you, that weeks before I would have been the same, would have been like, oh, I'm not making the times. And now I'm like, well, there's other things in life we should worry about. I went through big struggles. And then at the Olympics, I thought about giving up so many times. I was hanging on the bike. I thought, you know what, just get dropped, like forget about it, it's fine. And then on the run, I just passed athlete after athlete after athlete, and I ended up 4th. And a lot of people say, oh, fourth place, all the athletes who end up fourth, they're like so disappointed because it's the first loser. I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was so I thought about my mum on the last bit of the run.
Yeah.
And what Richard said about blacking out, it's one of the only races where, it's actually the only race ever probably where they had to put me in a wheelchair and take me away. Because I went so deep. With 1K to go on the run, I was in such a pain. But suddenly that kind of disappeared. I was like, you know what? I told myself during this is your last race ever. As long as you get to that finish line, completely done, you can quit. You can stop. That's how I raced. And that's how I felt when I finished it. So I was like, I'm done. I could not get up. So when I was fourth at the Olympics, of course, I wasn't third, I was first or second. But that was my best race. Yeah. Even though a lot of people probably disliked that race because there were not many spectators and it was not the real Olympics. I think for me that was perfect. Not all that stuff around it and no complaining people. And it was just these are the rules, these are the times, it's COVID. It was just clean. It was just it was easy because I had so much to think of already that it was so nice that I didn't have to deal with so much stuff. That was COVID actually was good. Yeah.
Crazy, yeah. That's insane story. I mean, especially given the circumstances.
You?
Yeah.
What was your?
For me.
Now I want to know that as well.
Actually, it was probably this year because I don't know how much you know, but I had some pretty serious injuries.
Yeah.
And I've got a hip replacement on the right side, and it was I'd won the national champs twice in 2015 and 16, and then I hadn't been since then. I'd basically been injured, got injured in 2018 and 19, and it was COVID. So, and I never thought I would be able to. I mean, I'd quit actually in 2019. I sold my bikes, everything else. I was done, and ended up coming back and thinking I'm just going to ride for fun, and then one thing led to another, and then started racing. And I never thought I was going to be able to compete on sort of the world stage and at that level anymore. And this year I was able to come back and win the national championship again after 8 years. Wow. And I was in tears.
Yeah.
And even though, I mean, I'd had other results in Europe and that were on a, because the national champs, obviously just South Africa, but the level is still very high. But it was just so much what it meant to me after the journey.
It's always a journey which leads to a certain result.
It's what it everyone, no matter what event or it's everything means something different to someone for a particular reason. And I think it was so much more special going through the hard times and then coming back, and because ultimately that was my motivation for coming back to the sport, was to kind of prove to myself, no one else, but to prove to myself that I could overcome this sort of setback in my life. And I mean, I guess for you as well, I mean, what was your main motivation to you said also when you crossed the finish line that you were ready to quit. I mean, what has been throughout your career, your motivation to race and also come back after hard times?
It always needs to come from yourself. If it's other people, you will have a problem, I think. That it's easier to motivate yourself than getting motivated from other people. But for me, it was a bit of a combination from what I said, going through such hard times and then often thinking, you know what, I'm giving up. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do this anymore. I just want to be at home. I just want to cry. And the moment where you're performing so much better than what you could. Because apparently, if I look back at my training, I was making times I hadn't done before. But at that moment, I didn't really realize that because it was all cropped up. I was still tired and still capable of doing more. And then that race, it finally just exploded. I could just show what I'd been doing the last months. But it's always other people secretly as well, where you're people always have something to say. And I found that quite difficult. And it's honestly the first time I say this out loud on camera, that there were people who were saying oh, Rachel should retire because she's been her mum passed away like 2 months ago, and she's not over it yet, and she's still coming over the finish crying. And I'm like, seriously, do you, like, first of all, you don't know me. Second of all, like, you've never spoken to me. Did you, like what's wrong with you? So people start to say like, oh, she's done, you know, she hasn't performed. And then only after the Olympics I realized that, like, what it kind of does to you. And not because they were telling me that I couldn't really race well anymore, I was not a good athlete, but because they were like touching my family, you know, that was like, it's like, you stay away from them. So when I was racing, I really felt like I'm doing this for my mum. I was like, Mum, I'm going to show you, I'm going to make you proud. And she told me, whether you believe in it or not, I don't know either. She's like, I will push, like, if you need me, I'll push you. And I remember thinking on that run, I was like, Mom, if there is one moment you gotta push me, it's now. She never did that again. So that was once. So yeah, just because I just wanted it myself so bad. And I felt like it was a good excuse to retire, which never happened.
But then you didn't retire.
But then I went for another Olympics, yeah.
So what was the driving force behind?
Richard.
Keep going. Richard.
Oh, there we go.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Is what?
So suddenly Richard Murry shows up and he's like, well, I'm going to race for the Netherlands. I'm like, okay, great. No, I don't know. Like, I felt like I wasn't really done yet. So I told myself I was done, but I couldn't yet. Also because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, some people say you need to quit at your highest. But I'm like, you never know what your highest is. Well, that's what I think. And yes, it sounds so amazing that you retire after your best race ever. And that's how people remember you. I'm like, yeah, but what if I'm still actually enjoying it? Without like having people say that maybe my results aren't that great as what they used to be. So I tried to put that to the side. Oh, I need to yawn, sorry. I tried to put that to the side. And I was like, okay, what do I want? And then I realized I actually still wanted to continue. And yeah, Richard also started to get back into training more after his heart issues, because that took a while for him to trust his body again. And then with the federation, we had sometimes a joke, because we had Dutch coaches, that he would maybe one day would race for the Netherlands. And well, there we went. We started it was a bit of a challenge. And he ended up racing for the Netherlands. Let's skip all the stuff in between. And then our next goal was, you know what, we can be husband and wife and we can be in the same relay. Like, that never happened. At least in triathlon, it never happened. And then we don't even know if it really happened in other sports. But then that was our next goal, to be in the relay together. The tricky thing is we have like international qualifying rules and national qualifying rules. The international qualifying rules, with those he would have qualified already.
Yeah.
But the nationals were like more strict. So I ended up qualifying. Another girl ended up qualifying according to the national standards, but Richard didn't. So I was like, wait, we need the relay as well. I mean, we all need to qualify, but you're not going to individually qualifying. So we ended up doing the relay. I had to change my perfect planned Olympic preparation for it. I mean, I had to skip altitude camp, and it was chaotic. To be honest, for myself, it was absolutely not the best preparation for the Olympics. But I said at the start, like, I don't want to go to the Olympics if you're not going. Like, the goal was to go there together. Otherwise, I could have done something else. I mean, in triathlon, we've got all these different disciplines, and long distance, short distance, cross triathlon, road. Like, it's like I can still do triathlon, but something else. But then we ended up qualifying. Then we ended up going to the Olympics for both of us, with probably not the results, at least not for me, what I had hoped for. But okay, we sort of succeeded with our goal of both racing in the relay. Yeah.
Well, it's still pretty cool to be the only couple that has done that.
It was interesting because it's like things within our federation have changed, so it was all a little bit vague, and it was maybe not as organized as we're used to. And I was like, well, Richard, things have changed a bit. So we went into the Olympic Village, and it was this guy from the from the Olympic Village waiting. He's like, yeah, I've got there's like 2 guys here and 2 coaches and 1 girl, but I've got 1 guy and 1 girl in the same room. And we look at each other like, I guess that must be us then, because that doesn't happen, or at least not often. So he's like, are you sure it's okay? I'm like, we're married, it's gonna be fine. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, it felt kind of odd. I was like, hey, roommate. So yeah, it was fun.
That's quite crazy. I mean, doing the same, both professionals in the same sport,
Yeah.
both were at some point sponsored by Red Bull, both competing in the relay, both got 4th place at the Olympics.
And that as well. Our dads share the same birthday. His parents' wedding anniversary is the same as my sister's birthday, so it's super easy. No, but there's a lot of there are a lot of funny things, coincidences, but we worked hard for this one. Yeah.
When did you guys actually meet, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, funny. So we actually met via Facebook.
Back when Facebook was the thing.
Facebook was big. Well, I don't know. I don't know if WhatsApp was there already. We started like chatting, but he actually, like, he will still laugh. It took him a couple of months to reach me. I was always trying to like say, no, but this friend of mine is here as well. So I didn't really want to do too much with him.
You made it work for us.
I made him work. So via Facebook really, and we started chatting, and then we had this. I said, oh, we're going on a training camp in South Africa, and then we're gonna do this this race just outside Cape Town, and it was in Blauberg. So that's where we officially really met, and we both won the race. We both had drug testing, so he's like, look how much urine I have, and I'm like, this is awkward. So the rest of the team left early that day, and I just hang around with him and his family, and I'm just sitting on the couch. And now, like 12 years later, almost 12 years later, I still come to that same couch and greet his parents now. So it's
really cool.
Went quickly.
How did that affect you, like your career as an athlete? Because a lot of the time, I think relationships can be difficult for professional athletes because you're so focused on you and everything, and you have to be. But obviously, having someone that's doing the same sport that you're doing potentially could have been helpful. But
I think that let's start with the good things. That you will always understand that the other athlete has to train. So if there's a family weekend away, you don't need to try to explain everyone, I've got to train. No, we know, okay, well, we got to train. Motivation, like if I'm not keen to go out and train anymore, and he's like, okay, let's get up, we go. And I'm like, okay. Like you always have someone to train with. So the funny thing is I never really train. That's why we often probably don't listen to podcasts. So when do you do? Often when you're out training and we're always together. So then I don't really like listen to anything. And if I train by myself, which happens not even probably once a week, then it's so nice to have some silence. But the good thing is that you understand each other. I think for us at the start, the culture difference was quite a thing. Like also because he has 2 brothers, I've got brother and sister, but like his family was already a bit older, and I have a brother who's like 9 years younger. So when we came here, my parents made the little house for us ready, but my brother was still in high school when he started high school pretty much when we met. So like the whole life was he came into this family while it was still like, working family, parents going to kid go to school, parents coming home, cooking, there's rules. Kid needs to go to bed at this time, and then you get into this Dutch family with their rules, and probably also not the standard Dutch family. And then I go to South Africa, and I'm like, whoa, this is like, there's no rules here. It's like all very chilled. And
Wild West.
when I heard stories of how he grew up, and I was like, liar, that's not, that you didn't really do that. And then the next week I could hear his mum or his brother telling the exactly same story. And I'm like, well, you had a different youth than I had. But that's cool. Like now, of course, you're just like, it's just normal. Everything is just normal. But yeah, that was interesting.
That was my next question was, what do you think? What was your impression of South Africa? I mean, I'd assume, had you been there before? The time that you met was...
No, it was my first time in South Africa. So my parents were both doctors and they worked in Zimbabwe. So I was born in Zimbabwe.
Oh, really?
So I was born there. So the funny thing is apparently when I was young, I always told my sister, I'm going to marry someone from Africa one day. I do not remember, but that's what my sister says. Well, there we go. It happened. So for me, even though I was still young, I was like just under 4 when we left. And I always felt like I really wanted to go back to that part of the world. Even we spoke about it today, that when I was at primary school, you know, people are like, I was born in a hospital, I was born at home. And I'm like, I was born in Africa. And kids were like, you were not born in Africa, that's too far away. Like, you know, and things like that. So I always had the feeling, okay, I wanted to go back there. So I didn't feel weird. Like it felt normal. I mean, after at least all the stories my parents told me, I don't have that many memories, of course, from when I was very little. But yeah.
So you're actually African.
Actually, I even have an African name. You can laugh about it. But I've got 3 names. Cool. My first one, my last one, and my middle name. So I even have an African name. So who knows? I'm more African than you guys. Yeah.
Hectic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
surprise.
No idea, actually.
There we go. Yeah. So that's why you sometimes see giraffes and stuff like that. And Richard didn't bring those giraffes.
Funny, oh.
Something new.
So you guys, I think you told me you guys got together 2014 or was it
13?
Around there?
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
And had your career, and then in 2021, which I already know was a difficult time, and then Richard had his heart issue. I mean, how was that for you, like being the partner there? Because I can imagine that is not easy also, and especially the time wasn't easy as it is.
No, it wasn't. So first, my mum, I was in South Africa. We were like prepping the last couple of months before the Olympics. And it was a Thursday evening, and my parents, we always, as a family, used to go to the track, to run at the track on Thursday evening. And they called me, and I'm like, it's Thursday evening. Why would they call me? Something must be wrong. But I thought maybe my grandparents or something. They told me straight to the point that my mum was sick. So there I am, other side of the world, prepping for the Olympics. And my mum is like, I want you to still focus on the Olympics. I want you to go there, and I'm coming with you. Like, we said we weren't, but I'm coming with you. Oh, then COVID hit. Olympics got postponed. I went home a little bit earlier because my mum it went bad quickly. Exactly 6 months later, after she got diagnosed with cancer, she passed away. And even for Richard being part of, we quickly got married because we wanted my mum to be there as well because I'm the oldest, to at least have one of her kids getting married. So that was a bit also for Richard difficult. You're getting married without your own family in COVID time, quickly do the ceremony, and couldn't go out for dinner. So my sister, who's a good cook at least, cooked like a lot of good food. But okay, then we were suddenly married, sitting here waiting like, okay, what now? And so just before the Olympics were supposed to happen, my mum passed away. And 6 months later, again 6 months, pretty much on the date, we're back in South Africa, swimming, and Richard doesn't feel well. And I've always been quite harsh to Richard. We always joked, I don't know what he has said, but it's the truth. I always say, come on, don't complain. We have a coach who only coaches girls.
Okay.
And Richard. So we always joke that he's the softest. Hopefully he can laugh about it now. So I always be quite harsh. I was like, come on. Like, it's like, oh, something's sore. It's like, oh, what else is sore? Like, just keep going. But this time I could see in his face that something was serious. So I drove him home. For the first time ever in South Africa in a manual car. But I mean, you're not driving if you've got something with your heart. Went to the hospital. And there I called my dad. I was like, well, we're in the hospital. Like, Richard is feeling unwell, something with his heart. We go see that doctor, and that doctor says, okay, you can look for another job because you cannot get back into professional sports anymore. And I don't know why, but the message was so like, I started crying. I was standing behind Richard and his dad. And I thought, not another person. Because at that moment, I wasn't sure what was going on, how bad it was. So I thought, I cannot lose someone else. Because at that moment, I didn't know that it's a standard, well, not a standard thing, but that he's not going to be the only professional athlete with it. So yeah, then I was like, okay, there we are again 6 months before the Olympics, and now this. So we ended up, he ended up getting things fixed, sort of, going back to the Netherlands, but the medication didn't really help. At the end, he needed to get an operation, but that was only probably 2 months or less before the Olympics. And I was like, okay, first I went through the period with my mum, then I had to deal with Richard. I was done. I had to leave. If I wanted to still perform well at the Olympics, I couldn't stay here. So I went to France for a training camp with my coaches, and there were actually only 2 more athletes there, but they really got me through. But that meant I had to leave Richard here with my dad. So Richard had his operation done, and then I remember that moment I was supposed to do a hard swim set, and I gave my phone to the coach, like, please, like, as soon as he messages, let me know, because then I know it's going to be okay. Well, I could not do that swim. But then I was there, training camp, without him, knowing he was not going to make the Olympics. Then I got back and we decided, you know what, maybe just do the relay, just cancel your own race. And I don't know if he told you about that. So, yeah, and then he doesn't end up racing. But I'm very glad he was there, that he was my biggest support in everything. That's the first thing. Okay, sorry. The first thing I thought about was my mum. And the second one was like, okay, glad Richard is there. But yeah, to at least have him there, that meant a lot to me. That was, that was good. Yeah. So it was,
and then you ended up getting an amazing result.
Yeah, 4th place. Yeah, I knew I was never going to do that again. Yeah, like for some reason, I think because you get so strong and you've got through so many difficult things that you're like, you know what? If I got through all of those things, I can get through the Olympics. I can do more than I think I'm capable of doing. Yeah.
All perspective.
Yeah.
Speaking of perspective, looking back at your career, would there have been anything now that you might have done differently?
No, I think when I met Richard, I also moved to his coach because I was young, always getting injured. I had only been an athlete for, since 2012, professional athlete pretty much. So I started in 2008 and I met him and I was like, okay, I don't know, maybe I should go back to university and not give this a go because I'm always injured and I'm not enjoying it. Then I met him and got a new coach, and sometimes I think, okay, maybe if I put more effort into the details, I could have trained more. I could have trained harder. I could have been stricter for myself, for my diet, for the people around me. But I don't think that would have made me a happier athlete. So yeah, looking back, I think maybe I could have taken more out of myself as an athlete. But I also see athletes who are only living as an athlete. And I think I also just need some fun around it. So yeah, if sometimes that means skipping a session to hang out with the family and a family weekend or whatnot. Yeah, okay. I did that. And yeah, would I, maybe if I didn't do that, maybe I would have been a better athlete, but I would not have been happier.
Yeah.
And I think you're not a professional athlete your whole life. So it's, now I can say, okay, I had a really awesome career and I'm still happy, healthy, I'm still enjoying it. But I don't know if I would have lasted so long. I don't know if I would have made it 4 Olympics if I would have always been so strict for myself. So, yeah, I don't regret doing that, but sometimes wonder, like, what if I would have lived like, like the perfect athlete? Yeah. Not go out for dinner, just be like super healthy and not go hang out with friends, but do your training session, sleep enough, not watching movies till midnight, doing the perfect things perfect. Yeah.
But I think that's, being happy is also makes you perform better, to a degree. And remembering that Rachel as a person comes before Rachel as an athlete.
Yeah.
And you touched on it already before, but what's next? Like, what's your plans? I know that you've got this farm up the road. What's the sort of next? Do you guys plan to have a family? What's the sort of next few years look like for you?
It's tricky because now we're all getting older, and
it's funny we're all saying we're getting older, and we're like,
As some
we're like
older
in the
people,
30s.
yeah, but I noticed it. I don't know if you noticed, but I did. I noticed the difference when 10 years ago or 5 years ago, when I got out of bed, I'm like, and now I get out of bed, I'm like, oh, my feet are sore, and I need to walk on my heels to the bar. Yeah, because I have an injury in my foot, which can't be healed. Yeah, they can cut it out, but then I lose the feeling in my foot. So what do I accept? Numb foot or pain in my foot? You know, like stupid things like that. So if something happens, if a friend will say like, oh, can you come over and help me this afternoon? Then I'm like, yeah, sure. Instead of saying, no, I have to train. So just not, if I don't want to go to a race, then I'm not going. And instead of feeling like, yeah, but I need to do that race because it fits in the points and whatnot. So now we're randomly doing World Championships Xterra. I mean, please, I hope you will not find a live stream because my dad is like, well, you decided it yourself. I'm like, yeah, it's a challenge. But now I look at the other girls and I look at the bikers. I'm like, I did not grow up mountain biking. I do not want to wear my Red Bull helmet when I go down there because that reminds me of the South African. And someone's like, are you that person? I'm like, oh God, no. Like, go ahead. And I'm like, no, you go ahead first. I mean,
so you haven't had too much experience mountain biking then?
No. Have you seen...
Richard was telling me that you guys have been on the mountain.
I've been on a mountain bike. But have you seen the mountains here? Have you seen it here? No.
Yeah, it's funny that they do say, even I've got family here, and they say, oh, but we've got some cool mountain biking trails up the road.
Yeah.
And I'm like, mountain biking?
Yeah.
I mean,
we've got trails with some berms, but I jump like... I'm like, for me, hopping onto the pavement is a thing. And now I'm going to do a cross triathlon in the mountains with like 1,000 meters up and down. Yeah, exactly. And I borrowed a mountain bike from someone because I only had a hardtail, you know. I have a full suspension, but that one is in South Africa, which hasn't been used too much because focusing on the Olympics. So in other words, we're just kind of seeing what we enjoy doing now. Same after the Olympics where I thought, okay, I'm going to be done, changed my mind. So who knows? We're working on the farm, which is a monument. And if you don't want to spend years on building, renovating and stuff like that, do not buy a monument. No, it's really cool, but my goodness, it's a lot of work as well. And family, we definitely want a family but one day. But also that we don't have like a time of when things have to happen. So we'll see a little bit what happens in the next couple of years.
Cool, it's going to be...
I hope Richard said something similar to that. If not, we got to talk.
He was like totally opposite.
He's like, well, this and that month, and then we have to... So, yeah.
No, that's flipping cool. It's going to be exciting time. I mean, it's somehow I've found, making this transition also away from professional racing, it's scary, but it's also super exciting at the same time because you've lived this life now for the last decade or more, and suddenly now it's sort of everything is not everything, but a lot is changing, and but I think it's also it's a new challenge, like
true.
Xterra.
Well, absolutely, but that's the thing. I've been doing this exact same triathlon, literally. Year after year after year. There's this one triathlon we do every single year, which is in Germany. And it's awesome. But you know exactly how next year is going to look like. And the year after, and the year after, and the year after. And sometimes it's also like I do not want to quit triathlon. I mean, I love sports way too much to quit. But I am looking of like, is there another discipline I would like to do? Or even if that's just for a couple of months to just decide, okay, which direction we want to go. Who knows? Like that's when people said they interviewed me and they're like, "Are you going to go for a 5th Olympics?" And at that moment after the Olympics, I was like, "Oh no!" But I also say never, because you do not. Sometimes you do not know what you want to do. You need some time.
So there's a question that I want to ask all the guests on this podcast, and that is, what does success mean to you? And also, what do you think has been the biggest factor that's led to your success as an athlete and got you to this point?
I think growing as a person. So it's kind of what we spoke about earlier, that not only the results make your career successful, but also what you have reached. If you could have helped other people or influenced other people to be the better version of themselves, or dare to do sports, or more than just hang up the medal and the next one and the next one. I hope to be able to influence other people in a positive way. So that would be my. I think then you're successful because I guess we only live once, and isn't it nice then to say, okay, well you've influenced other people's lives instead of just like rushed through life and just by yourself. I don't know. It's nice to have some connections here and there and help other people.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Richard said something quite similar.
Oh yeah?
To that.
Yeah. We're married.
So you can see you guys are thinking on similar wavelengths. So.
And we did not speak because I was somewhere else.
That's why I thought it's cool.
It's better. It's better not to know what you're going to ask, because otherwise you're going to think about it. And you want to give that perfect answer, and sometimes it's not about doing the perfect thing. Yeah.
And so for you, through your career, has there been anything, whether a character trait or support system or whatever, what do you think is sort of, because a lot of people try to be successful, whether it's in business or sport or whatever, and many people fail. Yeah. And what do you think has been the factor that's led to you getting to this point?
Well, of course it starts with a family who's willing to support you, because my parents are both doctors. My sister studied at university. My brother, so I'm the one who ended up racing around the world in my swim costume. At the start I struggled with that, because they're like, oh, could have gone to university, could have had a proper degree. So that is also my weakest point, and my strongest point is also that it's never enough. You always want more. You always want to do better. You always want to be the best. And without that, I don't think you'll get very far. And that's a tricky thing, honestly, currently in the sport, and not everyone will be happy when I say that accepting it's not always fun. Yes, I always say, when kids start doing sports, it needs to be fun. But as soon as it becomes a professional sport, it's not always fun. So just accepting that that you're very grateful for what you're doing, but that you always want to be the best. Always wanting more.
I think that's the nature of life.
Yeah, exactly. But if you don't have that's also okay. But then you maybe should also realize that professional sports isn't for you if you don't want to sometimes just hurt yourself. Literally.
It is hard. It's about. I think it's a hard balance, because you need to always, if you want to progress, whether you in a career, in the corporate world, whatever, you need to want to progress, but at the same time, you also once in a while need to sort of take a step back and look at what you've achieved and sort of find happiness, because otherwise you can also find yourself never being happy because it's always never enough, so it is difficult. Sometimes realize that, what you say, step back, thinking, it's not the end of the world if, but then a couple of hours later in training you think, if I don't do this, it's gotta be the end. True. Rachel, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate the time both of you have given. And thanks for the dinner. And it was a bit of bonus.
You're very welcome.
Come here for a podcast, guys. You get free dinner. It's a good deal.
Next time I'll make sure I've got a little bit more time and not planned the whole day full of other appointments and training. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
That was iconic.